Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 227 of the Sticks and the Six podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co-host, Peter Barricchini, and the man, the myth, the legend from the Hockey Podcast Network, Kyle Manifold. Welcome for your second episode with us, Kyle. How you doing today?
Doing great, guys. It's been a minute. It's almost like we went into hibernation for winter, and now we're back, and sun's shining out. We're good to go.
That's right. That's right. Bringing the
Spring
warmer
is
weather
around the
as we
corner, man.
head
Yup.
into the deadline, head into draft season, head into the playoffs. Maybe not all of us. But anyways, we got lots to talk about as we head into, of course, the NHL Trade Deadline. Lots of names starting to swirl. Obviously, the Leafs are very much involved. Your Calgary Flames also very involved with certain names, certain former Leafs as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get into all that, Peter, how you doing this week, my friend?
Doing great. Yeah, like you mentioned, and same with Kyle too. You know, the weather's getting nice outside. Trade deadline's approaching. I can't even speak properly right now because I'm so excited about this. Yeah, it's now in that grind mode of what the Maple Leafs are going to do right now, and we all know the direction they're going to go. We all know the direction we think they should go. It's whether they're going to do it and get things done, and that's what we're basically going to discuss on this episode. And if any of the players they're going to move are worth the assets and worth the price coming in, it's going to be a fun episode this time.
Yeah, in the comments already, we have our in-house Ottawa Senators fan, Jordan, who joins us from TikTok Live as well. So he says, let's get the trades going. He wants Uyghur or White Cloud off of Calgary to head to Ottawa. So we'll see what happens.
Good luck.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Good luck.
Anyways, guys, I will say I was at the Sabres game last night against the Vegas Golden Knights. I want to note something as this is the first time I've obviously seen Marner play live with the Vegas Golden Knights. He was a passenger last night, boys. He was a passenger. He did not look good. I know he's dealing with some sort of cold that's going around, but it was tough to watch. And Vegas, I was sitting there with my brother and we were discussing it. Vegas does not look good.
They're in the lead for the Pacific right now, but I do not have them going far, man. Like the goaltending itself and the fact that they've benefited off the loser point big time this year, it's a concern. It's a concern if you're a Vegas fan.
Well,
Yeah, it's been.
I was going to say, if you look at it, Anaheim's the only team in that division that has a higher win-loss record than a positive win-loss record. And they're sitting second in the division right now, which tells you a lot about how the standings work in the NHL.
Kyle, we got you on for good luck news and everything like that. Freeze just broke a Kiefer Sherwood contract right now.
Ooh.
5 years, $6 million AAV under that.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Not a trade, but that's a pretty big signing right now. I don't know how I feel about that.
That's that pay for later contract.
He's earned it.
That's basically what Bobby McMann is trying to go for right now. Just around 5.5.
He's definitely earned that, but that's stretching it, I think, at 6. I understand the cap going up, but
yeah.
That's a big piece of your top 6, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they went after him too, right? So, I mean, it makes sense that they want to try and lock him up. But that I don't know. To me, that's a big dollar amount. But, of course, the cap's going up too in the next couple of years. So, that might make sense maybe in 2 to 3 years. But right now, it just seems like a big number. But anyways, boys, before we get into all the fun talk as we head into the deadline, just a quick word from our sponsors over at the Hockey Podcast Network. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, is built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. As I mentioned off the top of the show, I was at the Knights game last night. They're in action again tonight at plus 110 over the Detroit Red Wings. So they're going in as the underdog once again 2 nights in a row, and they lead their division. So check that out on DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states, void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026 NHL. All rights reserved. Well, boys, it's going to be an interesting deadline, at least for this show and many others, including yourself, Kyle. The Leafs have not been sellers at the deadline for quite some time. At least in the Matthews era, it's been quite over a decade that they've been sellers at the deadline. They are going into this this deadline as a major seller, especially with the last 3 games coming off the Olympic break. They have not looked good at all. We talked last episode about 4 shots through 2 periods, finishing the game with 13 in the third period, just looking abysmal. And now names are flying across Leaf headlines. You've got Nicolas Roy going somewhere. You've got Bobby McMann. Steven Lorentz's name was brought up today. So I'm going to start it off with you, Peter. Your biggest piece that you think will be on the move for the Leafs at this trade deadline, and what do you see coming back?
Interesting about Lorentz right now, because it kind of feels like he's been scratched a little bit, or he's fallen out of favor, where maybe he's just not putting up the effort that maybe the Maple Leafs had once hoped has previously done. But I could understand why. It's just interesting now happening ahead of the deadline. And yeah, it's some of these depth pieces that just haven't quite cut it out at this point. And to me right now, the biggest fish that the Maple Leafs are trying to dangle is just Bobby McMann. They're trying really hard to try and get that first. And I know that Chris Johnson basically said, I believe it was on the Leaf Report, if I'm not mistaken, that let me try to find, I had it up here and it's okay, there we go. Based on conversations he's had yesterday morning, the third skepticism out there that the Leafs are even going to be able to get a first round pick for any of their players. And the Maple Leafs are trying to sell hard on Bobby McMann. Yeah, he's a late bloomer. Yeah, he's getting up there in age, kind of like Kiefer Sherwood, and he just signed that just under $6 million deal. So that's the projection that Bobby McMann was going to have. And, the best case scenario was you would get 2 second-round picks. But considering how fast he is and how much better he can be in the top-line role, Toronto's trying to dangle and get that first-round pick back as best as possible. Is that going to happen? I don't know, but if they could get multiple picks for McMann, I think that's the best case scenario. Even if you can get a top prospect, I don't think that's going to be a case, but like a mid-tier one, or you're probably going to get a little bit of cap, take some cap back as a result of that as well. Nick Roy's name is definitely coming up right now. I think he's on the move, or it kind of feels like he's going to be on the move. Scott Laughton is another name as well. Those are like more realistic possibilities, and this is when I keep going back to every single time, and it's just after the Tyler Myers trade right now where he went for a second and a fourth. If that could be the return for Tyler Myers, imagine the package you could get for OEL, where he's just earning $0.5 million more for 2 more years, and he's got more term than Myers. If you're a team looking for a puck moving defender with a championship ring, that to me says that you can easily get a first. And if you don't sell a guy that's under contract that has that kind of value to him right now, that would be a huge mistake. I know he's not being listed as a major target, but he does have a 16-team no trade list. So there are 16 other teams he can be traded to. And if a team's willing to pony up on that, you cannot turn that down. But to me right now, it's going to be McMann, Roy, possibly Laughton as your main 3. But I'm still holding out hope that if the right deal comes along and you can move OEL, I hate to do it, but you got to.
I was going to say, too, OEL is top 20 in defensive scoring this season as well, which is another crazy number considering, where he was at 2 to 3 years ago before his Stanley Cup run with Florida as well. But, Kyle, from the outside looking in, this is going to be an interesting deadline for the Leafs. Again, we talk about McMann. This might be the best season he's had as a Maple Leaf. in terms of overall production and the opportunities he's gotten. Another name that comes to mind as well on an expiring contract is Nick Robertson. Where do you see him kind of in the mix as well as a potential guy that could be moved on this deadline?
It's possible. Actually, another name that's got an RFA tag on him too coming up is Michelli. That was the first one that I looked at. And, because he's 25 years old, I mean, maybe they don't want to move on that too quickly, especially with like Nick Robertson. I would imagine they hold on to those guys. You want to hang on to younger pieces just in case. They could always be those quote unquote late bloomers. But just as a external outsider looking in here from the somewhat Toronto area, it's going to be really difficult for the Leafs to pitch some of the guys that Peter mentioned, mainly because when you look at the trade bait board, there's just other names that I think other teams would rather look at who probably could, no offense, probably hold more value to what they're looking for. And the biggest deal I think going into this is it's going to be a hard sell, right, for some of those guys. And, like you mentioned, if you can get maybe a second round pick here, if you can for some reason find a way to get a first, that's going to be a late first round pick. Nothing's out of the realm of possibility, especially with what we saw from Tyler Myers. But you can get some odd second round picks here. I think you got to take that as a win. And a lot of the bigger decisions you're going to really look at is more or less going into the off season. That's where I think you're going to really see some retooling and changes in free agency and all that start coming up. So, I think at this point, especially where, Andrew mentioned at the beginning where you guys have been buyers for the last couple of years, well, all of a sudden the assets have gone out the window, right? A lot of first round picks, saw one go last year. So, at the very least here, you got to rally some second round picks and try to hold on to the young guys too as well. So you mentioned Nick Robertson there at the beginning, ideally try to hold on to him and Michelli, obviously see if that's something you could deal with in the offseason. But I think the Leafs' biggest goal probably going into this deadline, get the odd second round picks here and there. And that's probably the best that you're going to be looking at here, because I think there's other bigger fish on the trade bait board.
Yeah, we've definitely discussed one, the Leafs pipeline, but two, their draft stock is just it's null and void over the next couple of seasons, and it has been for probably the last 2 or 3 as well. Yeah, there's this incessant need that Dubas had to trade first round picks, and it carried over into the True Living era rather. We've got Aaron Kotsar on Twitch here, who brought up a couple of thoughts around 2 of the players that we've discussed here. He says, "What's up, lads? I want to hear your thoughts on 2 ideas: McMann to Seattle for Wright and a pick, and Carlo to the Ducks for Mintyukov and a pick." I'll start with you, Kyle. What are your thoughts on both these moves?
I kind of like the second one a bit more. I think Carlo holds a bit more value. Sometimes, like with certain guys, I mean, Carlo fit in well in Boston. Maybe it hasn't worked out so well in Toronto, but maybe it's something that the Ducks are needing and they can look for. And frankly, it wouldn't be much to give up. I think the McMann to Seattle for Wright is probably a stretch. I think Seattle probably sees this as Wright holding more value, I guess, to their team. So I'm not saying that in its case, like it might be the right package, but I think Seattle would probably be looking to give a little bit less for that. But I actually don't mind that Carlo deal.
Peter, what are your thoughts on the McMann to Seattle and Carlo to the Ducks?
Yeah, I agree with Kyle on the McMann to Seattle for Wright in the pick. I think it's either going to be 4 picks and maybe, again, like I mentioned before, maybe a mid-tier prospect, a B-level one, either up front or on the back end. Someone with some upside but could be used in a depth role. Don't really see... If you added more to McMann, maybe you could probably get Wright, but even then it's going to be a bigger package to get him, because I do feel like Wright has a lot more potential and a lot more upside. It's just a byproduct of being a little bit further down the depth chart. But once he gets up there, he could be extremely valuable for the Kraken. And I honestly would do Carlo for Mintyukov 1-for-1. I may not even do for a pick, because it's a player that wants out and you want another player, or it's basically a player swap for each one. If you do want to get a pick, you could probably get a third for Carlo as well. And it kind of recoups of what you lost a little bit. You're not getting a Fraser Minton back. You're not getting the first round pick back, but you're getting still a highly coveted puck moving defender with a lot of top 4 upside. and a potential draft pick as well. So to me, that's at least half of what you could get that you lost for Carlo when you gave him up for what they did last year. Really high on Minton. I did write about him as well, how he could be a possible fit where they get younger, faster on the back end, has a little bit of that edge to him as well. Not overly physical, but he can have a little bit of snarl. So at that same time, I really do like that pick or potential hypothetical with the Ducks if that does happen.
I was going to say too, I like the idea that Aaron's coming in with here, because these are the moves that Toronto has been burned on in the past. And it's almost like you need something to go your way at some point. And these are the ones that you kind of like. I mean, I agree. I think if you move right for McMann, you're essentially trading a guy that probably has more upside, is younger, almost was a 20-goal scorer in 24-25 for a very similar player. Albeit maybe McMann comes with a little bit more physicality. But the Carlo deal is actually fairly intriguing because Mintyukov, super highly talented in terms of like his offensive production and the way that he can move the puck. And with Olin Zellweger coming in, like kind of moved down that depth chart a little bit, right? Like Mintyukov was there prior to Zellweger. Now Zellweger comes in. They made the move last season to get Trouba. And they're seeing a lot more success with less playing time for Mintyukov. I'm curious if the Ducks look to maybe make that move. And Carlo, imagine adding Carlo to an already playoff built team. It'd be intriguing for sure. So great comment there, Aaron.
The other thing too with the Ducks, they are stacked with a lot of defensive prospects on the back end. We haven't even mentioned Tristan Luneau as well, who's been up and down. Another puck mover. At some point, you got to figure out who's going to have the better upside, Zellweger, Luneau, or Mintyukov. Then they got a lot of two-way guys with physicality. I was a big fan of Noah Warren and Stian Solberg. Those are guys that can still fit as sort of that 4 to 6 range D-men that can be physical, shut things down, but still move the puck very well. So they have a lot of guys that could play a role in the future. It's just Mintyukov may not be that guy right now. And as you mentioned, Andrew, he could be that odd man out, basically. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I got a comment here on TikTok as well. Timmy Turtle says McMann could be worth a first. We've kind of talked about that, and he wants to trade Matthews because he thinks he's going to pull a Marner. You guys,
too early to tell.
Too early
to tell. I mean, I understand where everything's going, but also with like all the comments of like, is Matthews' time up or whatever? Is he going to go through a rebuild? Freeman already talked about this a couple of weeks ago that if they go through a retool, Matthews going to be in it. Like he's all for it. He's not going to like ship out just because of the retool. He's in it. That's the thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Like, had you asked me 2 years ago prior to Marner leaving and all the conversations about, whether Matthews was going to sign or not, like I was convinced that he's gone. That's also when the Coyotes still existed and he had the potential of playing at home. Looking at it now and some of the conversations he's had and the reaction he's had since coming back from the Olympics, having now won something, albeit a gold medal. I'm a little less convinced that he wants out. I feel like he's got this mentality of being a legacy player, rather than a guy who's going to chase a ring. I don't know. I could be wrong. I've eaten crow on this podcast a number of times, but I don't know. I just have this feeling that he wants to be like, what other player are you going to add to Legends Row in the next 15 years? Matthews could be a guy down the road that breaks every franchise record and ends up being a legitimate legacy guy for the Leafs, and albeit on a very historical team as well. So definitely interesting. One of the comments here as well, I'm not going to scroll back and find it, but one of the comments we talked about OEL, they believe that he's the most coveted defenseman on the market right now. Would you tend to agree on that, Kyle?
I don't. I don't think so. I think there's just other, when you look at a certain point, like for OEL, it's going to come to an end. Father Time's going to catch up to him, right? And it's a matter of when's that going to hit. Speaking of just looking at from a Flames perspective a little bit here, I know they've been looking at shopping around Braden Pahal, just use as an example here. Third line right shot D-man. a guy who is a cup winner. He's sitting there in his late 20s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there's just more of a longevity factor that something could end up working out, right? If you're going to, not to say that he's not valuable for OEL, but I just think at a certain point, something's going to hit and something's going to fall off here, right? Because how old is he again? He's 38, 39, 38?
I believe he's 38, yeah.
38, yeah. So I think he's got, you might have another year or two left in you, and again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's here for another 4 years, and I could be dead wrong on this and play it back. But
34.
Yeah, I was about to say OEL's 34, so he's the mid 30s.
Okay, okay, thank you. So he's mid 30s. So maybe on that point, yeah, I think I just think when you look around the league, there's potential prospects and other guys maybe in their mid 20s that teams are just going to be rather going after here. Could OEL join the Colorado Avalanche for like a mid-tier pick? Sure. But if you're looking for like him to be showcased as you wanting to really sell hard on him, I think that's going to be really difficult for Toronto. I don't see a reason in which, you guys mentioned Vegas earlier. Vegas kind of pulls the stuff all the time where they'll bring him in on a short-term deal. Colorado could be doing that. You look at a lot of the Central teams if you want to move him out of the East. Minnesota might want some veteran presence. Dallas just picking up Myers might not be it anymore. But it's those kind of teams that I think you're going to have your eye out for. I just don't see any other teams, especially in the East, because it's so jumbled up right now. It's crazy.
It's
right?
a mess.
So
yeah.
It is a mess. So I could see that more with OEL compared to some of the teams in the East. But yeah, it's tough. I just wonder, I continue to wonder with OEL, like, how much more left in the tank does he have? I'm curious about that. And frankly, this is coming from a guy who hasn't watched OEL a lot this season. So,
and I totally agree with you in that respect too. Like, yeah, like it is a hard sell because he is that 30-year-old defenseman. Yeah, he's past his prime, but he's still playing relatively well. And he's been one of the better Maple Leafs D-men this year. And obviously you're not going to be trading Morgan Rielly. I don't think his value is at an all-time high at this point. But then again, the no move clause and all that. But in regards to him and how he's been the most consistent guy, if there is a selling point for Toronto, I think that's the direction you want to go. Because even when Rasmus Anderson got dealt for a first-round pick, OEL had slightly better 5-on-5 production, just maybe slightly ahead of Anderson. And if he went for a first, and if we're doing a comparable for like the seller market kind of thing, which has been basically what has been labeled as it for this class or this year right now. If it is a seller's market and teams want to, or if Toronto wants a first round pick, Toronto's given up first round picks to teams that have wanted it in the past. Now that Toronto wants it, other teams aren't going to do it. Kind of feels like a double standard for other teams where maybe they don't want to help Toronto out, which is kind of basically the case all around.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the thought process that I was going with that.
Very quickly to counter that before I give it to Andy.
Yeah.
On that Anderson deal. Yes, it was a first round pick, but that wasn't the statement of it. It was getting White Cloud. It was getting the first. It was
other
getting
pieces involved.
Conditional second that could also turn into a first round pick. So do I believe you can have that selling feature on OEL? Sure. If I'm one of the external teams looking at something like this and I want to go on a deep run, I would find it difficult to honestly, I would find it difficult to even give away a second round pick for him. I really would.
I was going to say, though, the conversation around OEL too is interesting because as a 34-year-old, he was certainly on the back nine, like I said, a couple years back, right? And then he went and had this run with Florida. They found success in giving him a certain role. Now he's come over to Toronto, and I would argue that he's been a top 3 on that team the last 2 seasons. This season, obviously, with more offensive production. If you move him, let's say to a contender, he's likely going back to like a 4, 5, 6, right? Maybe even just a 5, 6. If that's the case, I'm curious whether he has that same success, because the way I see him, and just from watching him play, the more minutes he's contributed to the team, the more productive he's been. And I think he's a guy that needs to be on the ice, especially at 34 years old. He needs to be on the ice and get that opportunity to play and find a way to contribute that way. If you're sitting him on the ice, or if you're sitting him, he's playing 12 to 15 minutes a game. he's not going to contribute the same way that he would playing 24 minutes a game. So I think that's a curious point as well, because if he does get moved, the likelihood is it's to a contender. He's not a 1-2-3 on a contender. I think we can all agree on that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You bet.
So yeah, that one definitely is an interesting one. In the same breath, I just quickly on Anderson as well, seeing him with Vegas. I've said this before about Vegas. When you had too many personalities and too many strong players, you start to lose that chemistry. And I don't know if it was just last night. I don't watch a lot of Vegas, obviously. But watching him play last night, he just seemed so discombobulated. He didn't seem like the Rasmus Anderson from Calgary. He seemed like a guy who, again, is coming into a place where he's no longer the number one. He's now probably like a 3-4, and his play is not to the same level that it was being that number one in Calgary.
So to touch on that, because I have some expertise on it. Yeah, he has, I think, in total 4 points in his last 12 games-ish, something like that. Yeah, so it's been weird how it goes. Like, it's all of a sudden diminished when you make such a big deal like that, and you expect him, because he was going to be the replacement for Pietrangelo, if I'm not mistaken. And to see it diminish is like, it's great for us, but at the same time, I just kind of feel for him a little bit in that, man, like, you should be getting more of this ice time as well. I completely agree, though, that you have too many of these big personalities, guys that are supposed to be number ones and number twos, and it definitely conflicts with one another. And the biggest thing that I've noticed, because I've seen him a couple of times play for Vegas here, and what's I've noticed so differently is that Rasmus Anderson was so used to playing alongside the likes of a Joel Hanley or a Kevin Ball, right? Defensive defenseman type guys. And Anderson, who's more of that offensive production type defenseman, normally would drive the unit, drive the power play, drive whatever. Like in this case, because Calgary can't score, he'd be the guy to try to step up a little bit more. And that's why he's had a successful first 3 quarters of the season before he got dealt. So yeah, like it's kind of shocking to see how much it's gone down. But now all of a sudden, when he's getting mixed with other guys who are also offensive defensemen as well, like a Shea Theodore, for example, it does clash with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'll tell you, I've taken him in fantasy for so many years because he's just been such a stud for Calgary, and like watching him play, and maybe it was being live and just seeing more of like the off the puck kind of movements that he has, but like he just didn't seem like the guy that they traded for and offered what they did. It didn't.
Well, it's good for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anyways, I want to get into some of the rumors here around the Leafs. Obviously, one major rumor, and whether it's Nicolas Roy or Bobby McMann or Oliver Ekman-Larsson, it seems that there's a lot of conversations, Peter, going on between the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
What should we expect here? I mean, obviously the latest is Nick Roy going to the Oilers, potentially with Ekman-Larsson, potentially not. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, whether it's one player or the other or two, I don't know. Maybe you could try to make something a bigger deal or package out of this than you possibly expected. I do think that Roy, at times, I'm really torn on Nick Roy because I was really excited for him to come in and be that stable third line center. There are times where he's been absolutely great, but then other times where it's just like, yeah, he just seems to be off in another world, like just off positionally. He just hasn't quite fit in very well with the Leafs. And considering that he's a name coming up for Edmonton, because that Pacific Division is wide open and you know how they could use a little bit more depth, I think that'll be a great asset for them going forward. Now, I was going to suggest maybe you could do a McMann and Roy situation where, Oilers were probably kicking tires on McMann as well. Now more so Roy, or they pivoted to him or vice versa or whatever. You probably could have done a D-man, but I kind of think that's out of the question with Connor Murphy going there. I think that's foregone conclusion. Unless you want to get another, steady shutdown two-way defender in either OEL or Carlo, totally up to what happens. I feel like I wouldn't, if one move were to happen, I'd totally be okay with it, but I would be surprised if something bigger happened because Edmonton needs a couple pieces, and I think Toronto would have those pieces to try to push that depth a little bit further up. Like, not saying that McMann would benefit playing alongside a McDavid or Draisaitl, but there have been times this year where he has played alongside Auston Matthews and he has looked really well. Being that power forward, getting in on the attack, setting plays up, being that complementary piece. If not, he could still be an energetic third line winger that can make a massive impact. And I feel like they could use some of those guys that even if you get a goal or two from him here or there, I think that's a good addition for the Oilers regardless. And whether it's McMann or Waugh with that defensive stable presence, it's something that the Oilers need to focus in on because they're not getting the goaltending. Their defense is horrendous. And I feel like you could get a little bit of offense with McMann and then defense from a number of the guys that the Maple Leafs have that could get a genuine return.
I saw this insane take this morning that so Bouchard scored the overtime winner for Edmonton last night on a great comeback for the Oilers. And I mean, I think he's the first defenseman this season to hit 70 points, and which I was on board with. And then the next comment was, and he's arguably the better defender than Cale Makar. Give him the Norris. I mean, I have to assume this person was like from oil country because there's no other explanation in terms. Like, I watched this kid in London. He's god awful on the back end.
He's been god awful this year.
Incredible.
Last year, the year before that.
Yeah, incredible producer. Like, don't get me wrong, incredible producer. But as a defenseman, maybe the worst offensive defenseman I've ever seen in terms of how polarizing their offensive play is versus their defensive play. So, Kyle, the Edmonton Oilers, they seem to be Band-Aid fixing every issue that they have. You know, Skinner was the problem, so they moved him for Jarry. Now Skinner's excelling in Pittsburgh. Jarry's got a sub-900 save percentage since he came over. Defenseman seems to be their issue. Again, a Band-Aid type fix. All of a sudden now they're talking about maybe bringing in, you know, Nick Waugh as a depth guy for up front. Is this like them just trying to do whatever they can to make another run in the playoffs and maybe next season? Like, it seems like nothing they're doing is to really solidify, you know, we need McDavid to stay. He's signed for 2 more years. Let's get the pieces that are going to make it a long process for us. Or is it more like, let's get the pieces that are going to get us there this year, and we can fix everything again next year?
Well, it's definitely a sign, right? When he signed that 2-year deal, it's all of a sudden like you got to do what you can. So the Oilers are kind of forcing themselves to do something like this. Like Peter mentioned,
clock is ticking kind of thing.
Clock's ticking. And I said it as soon as he signed that deal. I said, okay, you're on the clock, guys. You got this 2 to 3 year window here to do something. I actually like Peter's bringing up Bobby McMann because they did waive Andrew Mangiapane, who really wasn't excelling there on that bottom 6. Mind you, the problem with bringing McMann over is Mangiapane, who I believe if McMann were to go over, that's probably where he slots. Maybe they try to put him up there on the top 6 there with McDavid and Draisaitl. Maybe, I could be wrong. But I think they want to shore up that bottom 6 more or less as well, too, along with band-aiding other things, which I'll get to in a sec. McMann being put on that third line doesn't necessarily solve anything because Trent Frederick just scored his 3rd goal in all season or whatever in like 40 games, right? And they signed him to an 8-year, $3 million deal, right? Terrible, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of set up Mangiapane for failure because if you look back and you remember his time in Calgary, I mean, man, you stuck him alongside at times. Like, there was a plethora of guys where you look at the lines he was with Lindholm. At one point, he was with Gaudreau. At one point, he was with Tkachuk, and yada yada yada. And it was so many times in that top 6 where he was with complimentary guys, and all of a sudden you get stuck down there with a Trent Frederick, and it's tough to produce, right? So I would be nervous for Edmonton to bring in McMann because, well, you did just have a guy in Mangiapane, and you're still stuck with that necessarily on the bottom 6. It would not surprise me at all if they go out and try to fix their goaltending again at the deadline because they have to. And Andrew brings up a great point, like with Bouchard. It's like your defensive play is terrible, and yeah, you can put up points galore, but it doesn't mean you're going to let in 6 goals like 5 the other night on Saturday against San Jose, I believe. Who knows who else is going to light you up in the playoffs too. So it would not shock me at all if they go into the deadline looking for even more goaltending. And yeah, you can go in and shore up the 3, 4, 5, 6 position as well too for your defense and try to band-aid it here. But nothing's going to get solved unless you get some, at least a save percentage of what, like 920, 930-ish.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I was about to say, it's interesting that you also brought up the goaltending factor as well. Like, will Stan Bowman go back and get another trade for a goalie, considering that he knew he dropped the ball on the first one?
Anthony Stolarz?
You just read my mind. I was absolutely so you know what the whole thing with Jordan Binnington possibly going out there, Sergei Bobrovsky possibly being available. Okay, so we're all on the same page right now. This is perfect because I was about to say, hey, Bobrovsky is made available right now. There's your legit number 1 starter.
16-team no trade list though.
Exactly. So, and if Edmonton isn't on that no team trade list, it's fair game basically. Same thing. And I was about to say, what if you offered a McMann and or Waugh with Anthony Stolarz? Because Joseph Woll, you could probably offer up Woll as well, but you saw what you have in Dennis Hildeby this whole season. Next year, he's not going to be waiver exempt. He's going to be in the NHL at some point.
Contract, yep.
Yeah, he's going to be in the big league at some point, and you don't want this issue to kind of happen again where it's a Curtis McElhinney versus Garrett Sparks kind of thing where you don't pick the wrong goalie. A whole different situation right now. But Hildeby shown that he could be an NHL goaltender. I even went to like a recent Marlies game. Yeah, a couple of moments here and there where he's over aggressive, but he stood tall against like a Montreal or Laval Rocket team that was getting their chances and getting quality looks. So you know what? You have to wonder if you could offer up a goalie for Edmonton as well, if that's the case.
That's where I want a little bit more intel into like what Joseph Woll was going on, what was going on with him earlier in the season. Because now you've got that decision to make, right? Like, Stolarz is injury prone. Was early on in his career, was again in the last 2 seasons, and now Joseph Woll's got whatever's going on, and like we'll obviously not speculate what happened, but. You have to have kind of some intel so you know which direction you're going here. Because let's be frank, with Hildeby being a one-way contract next year, you have to move something. And you've signed Stolarz to that contract extension. He hasn't really lived up to it this season, obviously with injury woes and the team just being abysmal. So it makes you wonder which direction the Leafs are going to go. But it's definitely, I've seen the thought floated out there that, maybe Edmonton does go after another goalie. But then there's a lot of question marks of whether, somebody like Stan Bowman wants to go and make one big goalie move and then make another big goalie move just ahead of playoffs. Given that you don't know what the success of the team is going to be outside of that. You could change the goalies 100 times. They thought Skinner was the issue. The issue was not Skinner. The issue was the defense playing in front of him. All of a sudden, Jari exposes that when he comes over and he's having the same issues, right? Like, I feel like they went out and they got Ekholm last season. He's kind of been not the same player that he was in Nashville. Darnell Nurse was your big guy a few years ago. You signed him to that massive deal. He hasn't really worked out. And then Evan Bouchard's your part of your core 4, let's say, and he hasn't necessarily worked out on the defensive end. And then you guys brought up Trent Frederick as well. Like, there's been some bad GMing going on in Edmonton. Over the last couple of seasons. Like, Trent Frederick's on the first year of an 8-year deal that pays him just shy of $4 million a year. And what has he done for you this season? So
3-4 goals.
Yeah, it's so I mean, the issue isn't just on the back end. The issue is not just in net. That's what I meant by like they're finding whatever they can get to Band-Aid fix the issues that they have within this lineup. And they're relying heavily on McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, even, let's be honest, Nugent-Hopkins hasn't been the same player this season, which is partially why they're where they're at. Hyman's been injured. He hasn't been the same player he was last. He was a 50-goal scorer. Yeah. Like, he's not a 50-goal scorer.
Too many goals.
And even aside from like McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, 1, 2, 3 in scoring, 37 points separate Bouchard and Nugent Hopkins. So it literally is, it's not just a 2-man show right now. Yeah, it's a 3-man show with basically your top 2 guys and top defender getting the job done offensively. But right now, there's still that gap between those two and everyone else. And you need to find a stopgap or middle ground player in between that's at least a 50-point getter right now.
Yeah.
That's the problem with Edmonton.
Yeah, no, 100%. In saying that, there is, so you mentioned off the top of the show there, Peter, about, the Leafs aren't really sitting. There's no roster management, the new NBA roster management in hockey as we head into the deadline. There's none happening tonight for the Leafs.
None.
Kind of makes you wonder what direction Brad Treliving's going. But what's your opinion on whether or not the Leafs should be sitting some of these guys in the hopes of moving them? Like, you already know that this team is not where it needs to be to get the job done. You have a top 5 protected first round pick. Is this a spot where maybe the Leafs should sit back and say, we're gonna rest McMann, we're gonna rest OEL just in case we move them, but if we don't, it's not the worst case scenario either for this team.
I agree. And I do think that, especially if it's guys like a McMann or Lawton that for sure they're going to be gone, why not hold them out for a game or two? I mean, Tyler Marsh has been sitting out for like at least a good 5 to 7 days, and he just got moved today. So if you want to protect your assets, you should do that for the guys for sure that aren't going to be there.
Right.
So to me, that's Waugh, that's McMann, and that's possibly Lawton. To me, it doesn't even matter how it affects their place in the standings, because even with those guys in the lineup, they're still atrocious overall from top to bottom. And I agree that, it gives them an opportunity to get better looks of some guys in the AHL, like Jacob Quillen, like Luke Hames, who is absolutely on fire right now as his, first full season as a pro player. He's looking very sharp. So why not give those 2 guys an opportunity or 2 games to see what they can do? And not just in a 4th line role. I want to see them, both of them, 3rd line, at least 10, 12, 13 minutes to see what they can do a little bit higher up or give them the opportunities that they need to excel in. So going back to the original thought of sitting versus playing, I don't understand why that's such a big deal right now. And Berube did say it could change against the Rangers, but that's on a back-to-back as well. Why not just do it for these 2 stretches? Because you're not playing Friday. Your next game is going to be post-trade deadline. Just sit these guys out. There's no sense in possibly them hurting themselves, even if it's a day-to-day situation. Maybe that's probably going to be best-case scenario. But why risk any long-term injury and then that value becomes nothing because nobody's going to pay up for that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because all the names were kind of floating around here. All of them have said they want to stay in Toronto, from Lawton to OEL to Bobby McMann has noted
that is a
he
good
wants
thing.
to stay. It reminds me a lot of Craig Conroy when he took over as the GM of Calgary and saying that we want players that want to be here, and that it was kind of playing off this idea of the Tkachuk leaving, the Goudreau leaving, and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna Leafs aside, there's a name on the Calgary Flames that should be on the market and should get moved at some point heading into this deadline, outside of the fact that maybe his contract is unmovable during the season. What are your thoughts on Nazem Kadri being on that market there, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. He was willing to sign here, right, all those years ago, and he's got, I believe, 3 years left at $7 million. A tough part of why this hasn't gotten done sooner is Calgary only has 1 spot left for retention because they're finishing that up with Markstrom and then Anderson, who obviously just got dealt. So they want to leave that open for Blake Coleman, who will probably be a deadline day type move. So they're looking for someone to take it on full. Colorado, who their general manager and their assistant GMs were all in Anaheim the other day when Calgary was visiting. But straying away from the point here, Kadri picked to sign here. And he's said numerous times that he loves being here and he wants to stay here. While at the same time, us Flames fans are praying that every night this team loses so we can at least get a top 2 pick, And that's not something that we want to do to Kadri. And nor did we really think, I guess, all those years ago, we'd maybe see ourselves in a bit of a different situation here. But it's kind of a blessing in disguise because we needed to bottom out first time in God knows how many years to get a top 3, top 2 pick. It's just something that I think Flames fans have been wanting. It's nice to know, though, that he doesn't want to leave a stench after he leaves Calgary because he has spoken so highly of the organization. And I think that's something that teams are kind of missing nowadays too, right? And it's something that I think Toronto's also experiencing now with, wanting to get rid of McMann, or, the rumors come up a bit with OEL and everything else that comes with it. There has to be, at a certain level, the culture matters within organizations. You've seen it happen with Florida. You've seen it with Tampa Bay. Big part of the reason, with John Cooper being there, blah, blah, blah. Culture is a really big thing. And it's something that Craig Conroy has said from day one. And it's something that he's been wanting to implement since day one. And he's always, and frankly, he's been looking at trying to get guys who are in their 22 to 25 age range, goal scorer, blah, blah, blah. The biggest difference between having gone through Brad Treliving and now going through Craig Conroy is Craig really speaks about the culture aspect and wanting to create an environment that guys want to be here. It's going to help with the new stadium, but it's about wanting guys to be here. And it's why you're starting to see guys like Nazem Kadri who are going to be heading out saying, we want to give you the best opportunity, but, understanding the process, like we want to do right by him. So that's, I just think, something that is valuable moving forward as an organization, as a culture, in terms of just any sort of success that you want to see in the future. Because in free agency, surprise, surprise, we're not really a hotspot, right? So it's about changing that and wanting to become that hotspot a little bit too. And frankly, too, like you mentioned the Gaudreaus and all that leaving, like draft picks who are coming in, like you want to envision them staying long-term. Mind you, that's what Gaudreau did. And, frankly, that's why Tkachuk had a 3-year bridge deal and he was here for 6 years. So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question with Kadri, I think we're ready for it. I think he's ready for it too. The difficult part is just finding someone who's willing to take on the full contract so we don't have to retain him.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's I just saw this up on X as well. The Florida Panthers have just signed Louis Domingue to a 1-year, 2-way contract. Might come into the whole Bobrovsky conversation as we head into the deadline. Just kind of took note of that as I was,
reassurance kind of thing.
Yeah, yep. As I was scrolling through, knowing that they likely aren't a playoff team. So that's an interesting one. Also worth noting on Leafs news, Chris Tanev underwent successful core muscle surgery. He should be ready for training in September. So that's positive news on that front as well, knowing that the Leafs were without their top shot blocker this regular season as well. Outside of that, guys, it's going to be an interesting trade deadline. I think it's going to be a wild week heading in here. Lots to talk about, I'm sure, for next week. Before we close it out, guys, do you have anything else you want to add to the show?
Oh, you Peter.
Oh, I was going to let the guests go first, but that's totally cool. Nothing really. I mean, it's the fact of the matter is that, the Maple Leafs needed to go into sell mode. Whatever happens in these 2 games, whether they do win back-to-back by some divine miracle, it should not overshadow or overlook the fact that this team is wildly inconsistent, that even if they do get to within 1 point of a playoff spot, they could totally fall off right after that again. And if you go the buying route, and we know the Maple Leafs are going to be sellers, but if they did think that they would say, hey, we're still kind of in this, we're going to buy, You're going to give up all those assets just to fall out and miss out. And it's going to be like that whole JFJ, John Ferguson Jr. era where you made all these trades pre and post lockout. You try to make runs, but it did not work out. And I am fearful that that's going to happen again because I do not want to relive through that. I've already written about how the 2013-14 season is comparing to this one, where it's like a massive fall off. Sell, get what you can. Even if you don't get the first round pick, just get something in return, man. You have the scouts that could look into the draft, because I know that the second round is going to be pretty deep. Get those guys as soon as possible and develop them and get them to the NHL. Simple as that.
Yeah, just it's an off-season problem, right? Get what you can here, man. That's all you can do. Get second round picks if you can. If you can try and get a first, wish you the best of luck coming up here. But a lot of this is going to be in the off-season stuff, right?
Oh,
You're going to have to look at, right? Especially when you're getting into the guys who are in the playoffs. You know, you're going to have time to look at this and really figure out what kind of direction you want to go in. And I think that's the perfect time to kind of evaluate everything.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go a different direction. I think based on the comparatives, if the Leafs don't come out of the trade deadline with a first-round pick, it's going to be an incredibly disappointing trade deadline for these guys, especially with the players they have available. The asking price for these guys, I don't think is out of the question, based on what the market is with a Tyler Myers going for a second, a Michael McCarron going for a second. So I think that's something that they have to look at. And for me, I don't think for like an Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I don't think you budge if you're not getting that first rounder back.
Yeah, you can't.
But that's based solely off of Tyler Myers going for a second round pick. But yeah, anyways, guys, it's gonna be a fun week. Like I said, we'll have a lot to talk about. I'll let you guys in on a little something after the show of a guest that we could potentially have on next week. So I'll kind of tease that. Outside of that, guys, make sure you check out the Hockey Podcast Network for all of their great shows. Check out DraftKings, promo code THPN. Check out SeatGeek and BioSteel, and the promo codes in the show description as well. And I think this is the first time you're hearing it, Kyle, but we close our episodes out now with our good friend Alex Hobson and one of his hit singles, 25. So here it is.